I walked into the Mercedes-Benz dealership that Tuesday morning, wearing my favorite jeans and a simple sweater, my hair still damp from the gym. I had $180,000 burning a hole in my bank account, and a very specific car in mind. What I didn't expect was to become the day's entertainment for a staff that apparently judged customers by their appearance rather than their ability to write a check. The receptionist, a woman in her 30s with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that never reached her eyes, looked me up and down like I'd tracked mud across her pristine marble floor. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone suggesting she'd rather not. "I'd like to test drive the AMG GT63S, I said, keeping my voice pleasant despite the obvious disdain radiating from behind her designer glasses. She actually laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a full-throated laugh that made the other customers turn and stare. "Oh, honey, that car starts at $160. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the Honda dealership down the street?" The condescension dripped from every word. I felt my cheeks burn, but I maintained my composure. "I'm quite serious about the AMG. Could someone show it to me?" "Listen," she said, leaning forward conspiratorially. "I'm trying to save you some embarrassment here. That car is for serious buyers only. We can't have people joyriding in our premium inventory." Behind her, I noticed two salesmen smirking and whispering. One of them, a tall man with slicked-back hair and a suit that probably cost more than most people's rent, approached us with theatrical concern. "Is there a problem here, Jessica?" he asked, though his eyes never left me. Jessica apparently was thrilled to have backup. "This young lady wants to see the AMG GT63S. The salesman's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. "Really? Do you understand what kind of car that is?" His name tag read Trevor, and everything about him screamed car salesman stereotype. I dealt with Trevor's type before in my business dealings. Men who confused expensive suits with actual authority. "It's a high-performance luxury sedan with a hand-built twin-turbo V8, I replied calmly. AMG-tuned suspension, 9-speed automatic transmission, and depending on the specific model, around 630 horsepower. Trevor's smirk faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. "Well, anyone can read a brochure. But seriously, miss, that car isn't for everyone. It requires a certain level of financial commitment and lifestyle to truly appreciate." The other customers were definitely watching now. An elderly couple examining a C-Class looked uncomfortable, while a middle-aged man in a business suit seemed entertained by the show. I could feel their stares like physical weight, but I refused to let these people chase me away. "I understand the financial commitment," I said. "That's why I'm here with cash in hand." Trevor exchanged a look with Jessica, and I saw something pass between them. It was the look of predators who'd found wounded prey. "Cash?" Jessica asked, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "How much cash are we talking about?" "Enough to buy the car outright," I replied, though I could see they didn't believe me. Trevor crossed his arms, his expression shifting from condescending to openly hostile. "Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but we run a legitimate business here. We can't have people wasting our time pretending to be buyers when they're clearly not." "What makes you think I'm not a legitimate buyer?" I asked, genuinely curious about their reasoning. "Besides my appearance, I mean." The question seemed to stump them momentarily. Jessica recovered first. "Well, for one thing, you walked here. The parking lot is full of luxury cars, but none of them are yours, are they?" She had me there. I had indeed walked the 6 blocks from my office building, partly for the exercise, and partly because I'd wanted to keep my current car anonymous until I made my purchase. But I wasn't about to explain my reasoning to these people. "So you're saying Mercedes-Benz only sells to people who already own luxury cars?" I asked. "Interesting business model." Trevor stepped closer, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was an intimidating whisper. "Listen, little girl, this isn't a game. These cars cost more than most people make in 3 years. If you can't afford to be here, you shouldn't be wasting our time." That's when I heard it. The distinctive sound of expensive shoes on marble, approaching from behind me. The conversation around us gradually died as everyone turned to look at whoever was commanding that kind of attention. I turned too, curious to see what could make an entire luxury car dealership go silent. What I saw was a man in his 60s, impeccably dressed in what was obviously a custom-tailored suit. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his posture spoke of absolute confidence, and when he smiled, it was the kind of smile that suggested he owned everything in sight. But it was the way the staff reacted that really caught my attention. Jessica practically vaulted over her desk to greet him, and Trevor nearly tripped over himself rushing forward. "Mr. Harrison!" Jessica gushed, her entire demeanor transforming in seconds. "We weren't expecting you today!" The man she'd called Mr. Harrison nodded politely, but his eyes were fixed on me. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important," he said, his voice carrying just a hint of amusement. "Important?" Trevor laughed nervously. No, just explaining to this young lady that she might be more comfortable at a different dealership." Mr. Harrison's smile never wavered, but something shifted in his expression. "Is that so? And why might she be more comfortable elsewhere?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jessica jumped in, eager to explain. "Well, she was asking about the AMG GT63S, and we were just trying to manage expectations. You know how it is." "No," Mr. Harrison said quietly. "I don't believe I do know how it is. Please explain it to me." Trevor cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable but committed to his position. "Sir, with all due respect, we have to be practical. That car represents a significant investment, and we can't just let anyone take it for a test drive." "Anyone?" Mr. Harrison repeated, his tone still pleasant, but somehow more dangerous. "I see. And what criteria do you use to determine who qualifies as anyone versus a legitimate customer?" The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. I found myself fascinated by the dynamic unfolding before me. Whoever this Mr. Harrison was, he clearly held significant influence here, and he was systematically dismantling their arguments with surgical precision. "Well," Jessica stammered, "we have to consider various factors: financial capacity, serious intent, that sort of thing." "And you've assessed this young lady's financial capacity? How exactly?" Mr. Harrison asked. "Did you run a credit check? Review her bank statements? Or are you using some other method I'm not familiar with?" Trevor's face was turning red. "Mr. Harrison, surely you can see that she's not. I mean, look at her." It was exactly the wrong thing to say. Mr. Harrison's expression went ice cold, and suddenly the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Look at her?" he repeated slowly. "What exactly should I be looking at, Trevor?" The use of the salesman's first name was like a slap. Trevor realized his mistake immediately, but it was too late to take it back. "I just meant her appearance. She doesn't look like our typical AMG customer." "Our typical customer?" Mr. Harrison mused. "Tell me, what does our typical AMG customer look like? Because I'm genuinely curious about the profiling system you've apparently implemented without my knowledge." That's when it hit me. The way he'd said "without my knowledge." The way the entire staff had reacted to his presence. The casual authority in his voice. This wasn't just some VIP customer. This was someone who had actual power over these people. Jessica had gone pale. "Mr. Harrison, we were just trying to protect the dealership's interests. We get all kinds of people coming in here, and we have to be careful." "Careful," he repeated. "Yes, we certainly do have to be careful. Careful not to discriminate against potential customers based on their appearance. Careful not to make assumptions about someone's financial capacity without proper verification. Careful not to embarrass our brand with unprofessional behavior." Each word landed like a hammer blow. Trevor was sweating now, and Jessica looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. But Mr. Harrison wasn't finished. "You know what I find most interesting about this situation?" he continued, his voice conversational but his eyes sharp. "This young lady has been nothing but polite and professional throughout this entire exchange. She's demonstrated knowledge about our products, expressed serious purchase intent, and maintained her composure despite being treated with obvious disrespect. Meanwhile, my staff has been condescending, unprofessional, and frankly embarrassing." He turned to me then, his expression softening slightly. "I apologize for the treatment you've received here today. It's completely unacceptable and not representative of the values this dealership should embody." I found my voice, though I was still processing the dramatic shift in power dynamics. "Thank you. I appreciate that." Now, Mr. Harrison continued, about that AMG GT63S. Would you still be interested in seeing it? Or have we completely soured you on the experience? The question was directed at me, but his eyes swept over his staff as he asked it. The implication was clear. This was their chance to make it right. Possibly their only chance. Trevor stepped forward eagerly, his entire demeanor transformed. Of course, I'd be happy to show you the vehicle. We have a beautiful model on the showroom floor, and I can get the keys for a test drive right away. The speed of his transformation would have been comical if it weren't so pathetic. 5 minutes ago, he was practically escorting me to the door. Now he was tripping over himself to be helpful. Actually, Mr. Harrison interjected smoothly. I think I'll handle this personally. Trevor. Jessica, I believe we'll need to have a conversation about customer service standards later today. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Both of them nodded frantically, their earlier confidence completely evaporated. As Mr. Harrison led me toward the showroom floor, I couldn't help but ask, "Who exactly are you?" He chuckled, and for the first time since he'd arrived, he seemed genuinely relaxed. Someone who believes customers should be treated with respect, regardless of how they look when they walk through our door. It wasn't really an answer, but I sensed there was more to the story. As we walked past the gleaming rows of luxury vehicles, Mr. Harrison maintained the same casual confidence that had so effectively dismantled my tormentors. Tell me, he said, pausing beside a midnight blue AMG GT63S that looked like it was carved from shadow and chrome. What drew you to this particular model? I ran my hand along the car's sleek flank, appreciating the way the showroom lights played across its curves. Honestly, I've been driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic for the past 3 years while I built my business. I promised myself that when I hit my first major milestone, I'd buy something that represented where I was going, not where I'd been. And where are you going? He asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Everywhere, I replied, surprising myself with the honesty of it. I started a software consulting firm 18 months ago. We just landed our biggest contract. And I realized I'd been so focused on proving I could make it that I forgot to actually enjoy the success. Mr. Harrison nodded approvingly. Smart approach. Too many people buy the status symbols before they can afford them, then wonder why they're drowning in debt. He opened the driver's door with a flourish. Shall we see how she feels? I slid into the driver's seat and immediately understood what all the fuss was about. The interior was a perfect blend of luxury and performance, every surface carefully crafted, every control precisely placed. The seats seemed to mold themselves around me, and when I gripped the steering wheel, it felt like shaking hands with destiny. The keys? I asked, looking up at him expectantly. He smiled and dangled them just out of reach. First, I want you to understand something. What happened here today with my staff was unacceptable, but it's not uncommon. Success in any industry brings challenges, but one of the biggest is learning to deal with people who judge your worth by superficial criteria. I settled back in the seat, sensing this was important. You sound like you speak from experience. I do. He handed me the keys but continued talking. 35 years ago, I walked into a bank wearing work boots and a flannel shirt, asking for a business loan. The loan officer took one look at me and suggested I try the credit union across town. He said they were more comfortable with my type of business. What was your business? I asked, starting the engine. The AMG's V8 rumbled to life with a sound like controlled thunder, and I felt the vibration in my chest. Construction, he replied, settling into the passenger seat. I had a crew of 8 guys and a vision for commercial development that everyone said was too ambitious. That loan officer saw my appearance and assumed I was just another contractor looking to overextend himself. I pulled out of the parking space carefully, getting used to the car's responsive handling. But you got the loan? Eventually. But not from him. I went to 17 different banks before someone finally looked at my business plan instead of my clothes. And you know what? That original loan officer still works at that same bank, in the same position, making the same snap judgments about people he meets. We turned onto the main road, and I felt the AMG's power as we accelerated. The car moved like liquid lightning, smooth and fast and utterly controlled. It was intoxicating. So what happened? With your construction business, I mean. Mr. Harrison chuckled, and I heard genuine pleasure in the sound. It grew. We started with strip malls and small office buildings, then shopping centers, then mixed-use developments. Eventually, we became one of the largest commercial development firms in the state. I glanced at him as we stopped at a red light. And the loan officer? Still at the same bank, he repeated with satisfaction. Though I imagine his attitude toward potential borrowers has evolved somewhat since my company became one of their largest commercial accounts. The light turned green, and I pressed the accelerator more firmly, feeling the AMG surge forward with breathtaking ease. Is that why you intervened back there? Because you recognized the situation? Partly, he admitted, but mostly because I hate seeing potential wasted. You walked into that dealership knowing exactly what you wanted, with the means to buy it, and the confidence to stand your ground when challenged. Those aren't common qualities. We drove in comfortable silence for several minutes, the car eating up miles with effortless grace. I found myself relaxing for the first time all day, the earlier confrontation fading into background noise. Can I ask you something? I said eventually. Of course. Who are you really? I mean, I know you have some kind of authority at the dealership, but beyond that. He was quiet for so long, I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight I hadn't heard before. My name is Richard Harrison. I own Harrison Automotive Group. We have 17 dealerships across 3 states, including the Mercedes-Benz location where we met. I nearly swerved into the next lane. You own the dealership? Among others. BMW, Audi, Lexus, Porsche. We've been in business for 28 years. The enormity of what had just happened hit me like a physical blow. So when Trevor and Jessica were treating a potential customer like garbage in front of the owner, yes, they were doing exactly that. His tone was dry, but I detected an undercurrent of genuine anger. They had no idea who you were? None whatsoever. I make it a point to visit my locations unannounced, usually dressed casually. You learn more about your business when people don't know they're being evaluated. I pulled into a parking lot and turned to face him fully. Those people are going to be fired, aren't they? Richard considered the question carefully. That depends on several factors. Whether they're willing to acknowledge their mistakes, commit to genuine change, and prove they understand why their behavior was wrong. But honestly, Trevor's been with us for 6 months, and this isn't the first complaint we've had about his attitude towards certain customers. And Jessica? Jessica's been our receptionist for 3 years. Until today, she's had an exemplary record. Everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes, but everyone also has to live with the consequences of their choices. I understood the distinction. Jessica might survive this with some serious coaching and a wake-up call. Trevor was probably updating his resume. What about the other customers who witnessed that whole scene? I asked. The elderly couple looked mortified, and the businessman seemed to be enjoying the show. Richard's expression darkened. The elderly couple are longtime customers, the Hendersons. They've bought 4 cars from us over the past decade. I suspect they'll be receiving a personal call from me tonight, along with an explanation and an apology. And the businessman? Never seen him before. But if he was entertained by watching a customer being mistreated, he's not the kind of client we want anyway. I started the car again, and we headed back toward the dealership. You realize I still don't know if I want to buy the car? Richard laughed, the sound genuine and warm. Actually, that's exactly why I think you should buy it. You're not trying to impress anyone or prove anything. You're not buying it because someone told you that you couldn't. You're considering it because it fits your life and your goals. And because it drives like a dream, I admitted, taking a corner with precision that would have been impossible in my Honda. That doesn't hurt, he agreed. But more importantly, you've proven today that you can handle both the car and the attention it brings. Not everyone can. As we pulled back into the dealership parking lot, I saw Trevor pacing near the entrance, his phone pressed to his ear. Jessica was nowhere to be seen, but there was a different woman behind the reception desk, someone older with a professional but warm demeanor. Changes already? I asked. Richard followed my gaze. Jessica asked to go home early. Apparently, she needed time to think about her career priorities. The woman at the desk is Margaret, our assistant manager. She's covering reception until we sort things out. We parked the AMG in its original spot, and I turned off the engine with genuine reluctance. The silence felt wrong after the car's purposeful rumble. "So," Richard said, "what's the verdict?" I looked at him, this unexpected ally, who had transformed my day from humiliating to empowering. "I have one condition." "Name it." "I want to buy the car from Margaret. Not Trevor, not Jessica if she comes back, and not some manager trying to smooth things over. I want to work with someone who treats customers like people instead of dollar signs." Richard's smile could have powered the entire dealership. "I think that can be arranged. Margaret's actually one of our top sales associates. She just doesn't usually work the floor because she's too busy training our newer staff on proper customer service." "Ironic," I said. "Completely," he agreed. As we walked back into the showroom, I noticed the entire atmosphere had changed. The staff moved with more purpose, more awareness. Word had clearly spread about the morning's events and their aftermath. Margaret greeted us with a warm smile that reached her eyes. "Mr. Harrison, and you must be the customer interested in the AMG. I'm Margaret Chen, and I'd be delighted to help you with your purchase today." Finally, someone who knew how to do their job properly. "Actually," I said, "I'm very interested in buying it. What do we need to make that happen?" "Well," Margaret said, pulling out a tablet and settling into professional mode. "Let's start with the basics. Financing or cash purchase?" "Cash," I replied, enjoying the way her expression brightened with professional satisfaction rather than skepticism. "Excellent. That certainly simplifies things. And since you've already test-driven the vehicle, I assume you're satisfied with its performance?" "More than satisfied. It's exactly what I've been looking for." From the corner of my eye, I saw Trevor approaching, but Richard intercepted him with a subtle gesture that sent the salesman retreating to his desk. Margaret either didn't notice the byplay or was too professional to acknowledge it. Perfect. Let me pull up the specifications for this particular model, and we'll go over the details. As Margaret began walking me through the car's features and options, I felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with the purchase itself. This was how business should be conducted, professionally, respectfully, and without judgment. 20 minutes later, I was signing paperwork and arranging for immediate delivery of my new car. Margaret had been efficient, knowledgeable, and genuinely pleasant throughout the entire process. More importantly, she treated me like a valued customer from the moment we shook hands. "Insurance verification will take about an hour," she explained, "but we can have the car detailed and ready for pickup this afternoon if you'd prefer." "That would be perfect," I said, writing out a check that represented months of careful saving and smart business decisions. "I can come back around 3? "Absolutely. I'll have everything ready." As I prepared to leave, Richard appeared beside me. "Before you go, there's something I'd like to discuss with you. Would you have time for coffee across the street?" I was curious enough to agree. The cafe was a small, upscale place that probably catered to the dealership crowd. Richard ordered black coffee. I asked for a latte, and we settled into a quiet corner booth. "I have a proposition for you," he said, without preamble. "I'm listening." "Your software consulting business. What kind of clients do you work with?" The question surprised me. "Mostly small to medium-sized businesses that need custom solutions. Database management, workflow optimization, inventory systems. Nothing revolutionary but effective." "And you built this from nothing?" "From my kitchen table, actually. I spent 2 years working corporate IT during the day and building my client base at night. Finally took the leap when I had enough contracts to support myself." Richard nodded approvatively. "That's exactly the kind of entrepreneurial spirit I like to see." "Here's my proposition. I'd like to hire your firm to evaluate our customer management systems across all 17 locations." I nearly dropped my coffee. "That's a significant project." It would be. We're looking at complete integration of our sales, inventory, service, and customer relations systems. The current setup is a patchwork of different platforms that don't communicate effectively. My mind was already racing through the possibilities. A project like this could establish my company as a major player in the regional business software market. "Can I ask why you're offering this to me? I mean, you met me 2 hours ago." "Because," he said simply, "you've already shown me more about customer service and professional standards than most of the consultants I've worked with in the past 5 years. You knew what you wanted, you communicated clearly, you maintained your composure under pressure, and you treated everyone with respect, even when they didn't deserve it." "Even Trevor?" I asked with a slight smile. "Especially Trevor. You could have destroyed him when I showed up, could have demanded his immediate firing, or made a scene that would have humiliated him completely. Instead, you maintained your dignity and let the situation resolve itself professionally." I considered this. It was true that I could have played the victim card much harder than I had, could have demanded immediate satisfaction, and probably gotten it. "I don't believe in kicking people when they're down," I said. Besides, Trevor learned more from being corrected by his boss than he would have from being attacked by an angry customer. Exactly my point. You understand that sustainable change comes from education and accountability, not from public humiliation. That's the kind of thinking I want applied to our business systems. The offer was tempting, incredibly so. But I'd learned to ask the hard questions up front. What's the timeline and budget range we're talking about? 18 months for full implementation, with benchmarks and deliverables every quarter. Budget is negotiable based on scope, but we're looking at mid-six figures for the complete project. I nearly choked on my latte. This was more than double my best year to date. That's substantial. It's also exactly what this project will be worth if it's done right. Our current inefficiencies are costing us more than that annually in lost sales, duplicate efforts, and customer service failures. Like what happened this morning. If we'd had proper customer tracking and staff training protocols, Trevor would have known better than to prejudge a potential buyer. And Jessica would have had systems in place to qualify customers professionally rather than superficially. I leaned back in my chair, mind spinning with possibilities. This project could transform my business, establish relationships with other major clients, and provide financial security for years to come. "I'm interested," I said carefully, "but I'd need to understand the full scope before committing. This would essentially become my primary focus for the next year and a half." "Understood. I'm not expecting an answer today. What I'd like to do is arrange for you to visit our headquarters next week, meet with our IT director and operations manager, and get a complete picture of what we're working with. And if I decide it's not a good fit, then we part ways professionally, and you still have a new car and a story about the day you put some car salespeople in their place." I laughed, appreciating his straightforward approach. "When you put it like that, I don't see any downside to exploring the possibility." "Excellent. I'll have Margaret give you my business card when you pick up your car. Call my office tomorrow and we'll set up the meeting." We finished our coffee in comfortable conversation, talking about business philosophy, customer service standards, and the challenges of scaling a small company. Richard was genuinely interested in my experiences, and surprisingly forthcoming about his own struggles in building his automotive empire. By the time we walked back to the dealership, I felt like I'd made a valuable connection, regardless of whether the consulting project worked out. Margaret had my paperwork ready, along with a complete orientation packet and Richard's business card. The car gleamed under the showroom lights, detailed to perfection and ready for its new owner. As I signed the final documents, I noticed Trevor hovering near the service department, clearly wanting to approach but not daring to. "Go ahead," Richard said quietly, noticing my glance. He's been waiting to apologize properly. I walked over to where Trevor stood, his earlier arrogance completely replaced by obvious anxiety. "Ma'am," he started, his voice shaky, "I wanted to apologize for my behavior this morning. It was unprofessional, prejudiced, and completely inappropriate. I have no excuse for how I treated you." His apology sounded rehearsed, but the emotion behind it seemed genuine. "Apology accepted," I said simply. "We all make mistakes. The question is what we learn from them. I've learned that I was completely wrong to judge you based on your appearance, and that I nearly cost this dealership a significant sale because of my prejudices." "What else have you learned?" I asked, genuinely curious about his thought process. Trevor was quiet for a moment, clearly struggling with deeper realizations. That success isn't always visible from the outside, and that treating people with respect should be the baseline, not something you earn by proving your worth. It was a better answer than I'd expected. "That's a good start," I said. "Use it." As I drove my new AMG GT63S out of the dealership parking lot, I reflected on how completely the day had transformed from its humiliating beginning. I'd gained not just a car, but potentially a business relationship that could change my company's trajectory, and a reminder that standing your ground with dignity often leads to unexpected rewards. The car responded to every input with precision and power, the V8 engine providing a soundtrack that made every mile feel like an accomplishment. This wasn't just transportation. It was a statement of intent, a promise to myself that I would never again accept being diminished by other people's limited perspectives. My phone buzzed with a text from my business partner back at the office. "How did the car shopping go?" I smiled, composing my response as I waited at a red light. "Better than expected. Got the car, and possibly our biggest client ever. Sometimes the best victories come from the worst beginnings." As I drove toward my office to share the day's events with my team, I realized that Richard Harrison had given me something more valuable than a potential contract or intervention with his staff. He'd shown me what it looked like when someone with power chose to use it responsibly, standing up for principles rather than profit margins. The morning's humiliation had transformed into an afternoon of possibility, proof that how we handle adversity often determines the opportunities that follow. And as the AMG's engine purred beneath me, carrying me toward whatever came next, I knew that I'd never again let anyone's small thinking limit my large dreams.